Hello, welcome to my studio. Come on in. If you can get through the door, that is. Now, this is where my paintings are brought to life. For my indoor paintings, that is. Where my creation takes place. It's where the paintings eventually get framed. When I have a model, this is where the model comes to inspire me in the creative process. Now, this is the picture which I'm going to have a go at painting. It's based on this little oil sketch here done at a place called Baby Bay near Pulzeth. It's an oil sketch done in the open air, and I've also got a couple of others done in the same place which I hope will help me out. One gets information from all kinds of things, and of course I've drawn in my sketchbook. I have drawn and sketched this place many times before, so I've got it basically in my head. I've drawn out the composition in charcoal followed by oil paint, diluted oil paint, fairly accurately done, especially these two figures here. So the figures are based primarily, or in the first instance, on this drawing, which is a nice drawing, but it's a bit static. So I've redrawn it to give it a little bit more movement, which is the kind of movement that I want in the picture, where it sort of leans a little bit leftwards. Now, the size of the picture is 14 by 18. These figures are fairly small because I want them to sort of fade into the background a little bit, rather than some of my paintings where the figures tend to dominate the foreground rather a lot. And I felt that in this it would be better to have them glancing over this way towards these figures here, which are in fact taken from the original sketch. And then there's a little pile of sand here. My colours that I use, I will mention during the painting process rather than talk about them now. So as I go along, I will try and give you some information about which colours I use. Well, here we are with the panel on the easel and the drawing on the panel, all ready to receive the first brush strokes. The Chinese say every journey starts with the first step, and every picture starts with the first brush strokes. So I have mixed a blue for the sky because I'm going to start with the sky. I'm concentrating on the background because I know that my two figures are drawn to the standard that I want them to be drawn, and the rest of the drawing is pretty well established. So I can forget about the figures and I can forget about the rocks, and I can concentrate on the sky and the headland, which is what I will try and do now. So I've taken two blues. One is ultramarine blue and the other one is manganese blue, because the two colours go rather well together to make a sky colour. It's a good blend. I wet my brush slightly in white spirit, just a bit, not too much, because I don't want it liquid. I want the paint to be fairly solid. I've already made it too liquid, so let's try again. There we are. Okay. I'm imitating the sky that I've got in my study. There's the first stroke. Will I remember it when I come to the end? Probably not. I always think I'm going to remember the beginning. It's like when you go on a journey, you never remember when you first started off by the time you get to the end. I'm using a fairly big, rather clumsy looking brush. The bigger the brush, the bolder you can be. And in the beginning it pays to be bold and not to fiddle around with small brushes. Be as bold as you can. There's plenty of time for smaller brushes later. So that's a piece of advice you often hear and read in books. Use a bigger brush than you feel comfortable with, and it's good advice. Now I've got clouds here which are a warm colour. There's a certain amount of orange in them, so for that I'm going to use cadmium orange and probably a little bit of yellow ochre, but all in very small amounts. So I don't want a bright orange sky, I want soft orange clouds. I will probably take another brush for that because I don't want the blue mixing with it, but I've left a space for clouds. I like this little swirl here, and I also want a swirl that comes down towards the figures, because the figures have got a sort of a leftward feel to them and tilt to them, and I want things in the background to reflect that tilt. I'll take another brush, white, that's my Alkyd titanium white, remember, fast drying. So tomorrow everything will be dry. Plenty of it, nice and thick. Try that. Yes, that's good. I'm going to take my rag and dip it in some turps and form the shape of the clouds up here. Before I put colour on. And then down here towards the girls here. Hopefully I'll carry that through all the way through the painting. Now you can be fairly free when you paint skies. The sky is free as a bird. You can let yourself go. So it's a good way of starting the picture. So into this white has gone, I'm going to take a bit more white, has gone cadmium orange and a bit of yellow ochre. And this is my Griffin Alkyd white, produced by Winsor & Newton. You don't have to use that, but if you like fast drying pictures, that's the thing to use. Now I'll take my blue again because I've got to work out what I'm doing here. I'll leave some little white bits to receive clouds, to represent a bright summer's day. Although in fact I don't know whether I did this oil sketch in summer, it may have been another season. Sometimes the winter looks more like a sunny winter's day, looks more like summer than summer does sometimes. if I feel that the orange is getting a little bit too orange, well, I'll wipe some of it off and put something else there. Now, as the clouds come down, they do get a bit grayer as they come down because it's hazy. And this picture, I hope, will have haze and sea spray somewhere in it. In other words, nothing will be too sharply defined. The beginning of a picture is always the most pleasurable part. It does unfortunately get slightly more complicated as you go on. All the way down here. Now my drawing, and the whole drawing on the panel, is dry, which is important because I may actually paint over it as I go along and then rub out where I've painted over it. So by being dry and solid, it will last all the way through the painting. I'm going to vary this colour in a minute as I come down. I'm going to put in, no, not yet, I'm going to keep going with my clouds. Keep going with my clouds. Cadmium orange is a very useful colour to warm up white. Has to be used in small quantities because it's a very strong colour. Also very expensive. I can do a certain amount of blending, but I don't want to do too much. I want to keep the brush strokes visible and robust. Now, as I come down, the question is which brush to use. I'll use this one. I'm going to put a little bit of grey in, and for the grey I'm going to use Payne's Grey. This is, what make is it? This is Sennelier Payne's Grey, but it doesn't really matter what it is. It's a rather bluish Payne's Grey. Right, now I've brought a little slightly grey colour down towards the horizon, only just a bit. And I've also introduced a little bit into the light clouds to give them a little bit of form here and there. Am I making this up? Yes, I am making it up. I'm allowed to do that. And I enjoy doing it. Now, here in this part, this is hazier, and I want it hazier there as well on my picture. So the white clouds, the grey clouds, the white clouds go into the blue, they blend. I'm still using the same rather clumsy brush, hog brush. So this blends. You do this while the paint, obviously while the paint's still wet, but you can also do it while it's tacky. And with Alkyd white, your colours will go tacky, and you can use that to advantage. Oh, that's quite nice. I like that. Now, where are we? we have got down to the headland. Before I go on with the next bit, I just recap on the colours. I think I haven't put any paint on here, so let's put some paint on. I don't want to leave bits with no paint on. Bare canvas doesn't attract me. There. Now, before I go on to the headland, quick recap on the colours. Alkyd titanium white, cadmium orange, yellow ochre, and then for the cool colours of the sky, the blue colours, ultramarine and manganese blue. Manganese blue produced by Winsor & Newton. It's called manganese blue hue, which means that it's actually got no manganese in it. It's an imitation, but it's very good and very permanent and cheap. Manganese blue is expensive. Right, now to the headlands. This one is called Stepper Point, and all local people know it really quite well. It's a favourite area for sailing and surfing and all kinds of things. And here is Trevose Point. At least I think it's Trevose Point. This is certainly Stepper Point here. So let's try and get them in. There's a little island here afterwards, and there's this one here. Don't ask me what it's called. Well, there's two little islands there. Now, to mix this, the colour for this headland, this is obviously a different kettle of fish here. I've taken olive green, olive green. Also probably with a little bit of cadmium orange. Just a teeny bit. I'll be naming these colours as I go along because that does save time, and also it means more, I think, when you see the colours being used. Brush, I'll take a smaller brush, or shall I follow my advice to use a large brush? I'll do that, I'll use a larger brush. Practice what you preach, as they say. Now, so there's olive green, cadmium orange. You can probably tell I like cadmium orange quite a bit. And for the, wait a minute, when it comes to the darks, I will use something totally different, and I'm going to go on with this big brush. By the way, I clean my brushes in white spirit, and I suppose that the white spirit also serves to dilute the paint when necessary, which is perfectly alright. It's quite good practice, white spirit. You don't need anything else. Now I'm going to take a darker colour. Oh, Payne's Grey I forgot to mention. We've mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. Payne's Grey. And Payne's Grey and Mars Violet. I don't know if you've heard of Mars Violet, but it's a very, very useful colour. Deep. It's a deep iron oxide colour. Let's try that. I'm mixing my colours, by the way, on a glass palette, which I do in the studio because I've got more room on a big glass palette, and also glass palette's much easier to clean. When I paint outside, I use a wooden palette, a small lightweight wooden palette for convenience. There we are. Now I say that I've drawn this picture out fairly precisely and very carefully, but that doesn't mean to say that you can't change things as you go on. Frequently you do have to change things, because what you thought was a really good, accurate drawing, as the painting proceeds, you often find that it's not quite what you thought it was. So you can change. Good thing about oil painting is that you can change anything. I'm not saying I'm going to, but now in this picture, I want to have spray that's coming in from the left. The light is coming from the left. As you can see on here, it's shining on the sea. So the light's coming from the left, and the spray is between the foreground rock here and the background headland there. So this will be very, very soft and hopefully very atmospheric by the time I've done it, I hope. I try to be fairly accurate with the shape of rocks. People say, oh, well, what does it matter? One rock looks much like another. One headland looks like another, which is true. They do look quite similar. But they've all got their characteristic shape, and it is worth taking trouble, respecting the shape that you see in front of you and that you get to know. I mean, we get to know these shapes quite well here. I've done so many drawings of this, you wouldn't believe it. So that's beginning to go in. I'm going to begin to hopefully get a little bit of spray in here now. Clean my brush, white spirit, paint rag. Paint rag is very important. You're nothing without a paint rag. Now, a lot of this is experimenting. A certain amount of trial and error happens. Hopefully your past experience ensures that you don't get things too wrong, because it's very annoying in painting to have to continually correct what you've done. A bit of correction is always okay, but if you find yourself correcting more than you are painting, then you know that it's a bit irritating. So this is the beginning of my haziness. Just the beginning. So I've started out right from the beginning. When the paint's dry, and then I will go over it again and it'll look more hazy, but I'm still going to try and do it now at an early stage, if possible. I'm sneaking a few other colours in without telling you what they are, but we'll discuss it in a sec. the edge of a large brush is actually quite a precise tool. Used edge on, you can do a lot with it. Right, now I'm going to make sure that I bring that right down to the sea. The extra colour that I've put in, that I have used, somewhere in this spray here, in this haze, is permanent rose. Permanent rose. A strong, dark, very permanent pink colour. Everyone knows permanent rose. Okay, next. Now for this I think I might use a smaller brush because we're moving on to the next headland, which is very far away in the great scheme of things. Choose a suitable brush if I can find that. I can't. Oh, this will do. Good. Experiment a bit with the colour. We know that it's going to be a cool colour, probably with blue or mauve in it. Have I got mauve? Yes, I have. I've got cobalt violet. There's another colour, cobalt violet, but it's cobalt violet hue, so it has got no cobalt in it, and it is also much cheaper and permanent. When you do pictures involving the horizon of the sea, it's always advisable when you draw it in to make sure that you have got it straight, because it's very irritating when you finished a picture to suddenly realise you've got the horizon crooked. Plus a little island here. A little island here. I'll firm up on the drawing of that later, but that is the pattern. A lot of haze here where it meets the sea. Soft haze. And there we have the beginning of the picture. The more sure you are of the drawing on your canvas, the more freedom it gives you when you come to paint. Well, I think I might as well branch down into the sea now.